What's up everybody, I hope you're having an amazing day so far. I'm your host Phil and welcome to today's video. In this video we're going to check out reamping in general. So we're going to talk about reamping, what it does, what it's for. We're going to talk about some different setups in regards of, let's say, hardware setup, software setup. Going to talk about some levels. I already have something prepared on that front. And yeah, hopefully you're going to join the ride. We're going to have some fun around with this topic. Let's get right into it. All right, one thing straight up, this is going to be a more of a casual video because I just want to get rolling. I just want to kind of get back into filming something, explaining a few things. So, yeah, reamping. What is it? Basically, let's just imagine the following situation. You're doing a session with a producer, you have your sound set up, everything sounds good, and you're playing. Now, let's just pretend that after the session, your producer's like, or even you are like, I wish I would have dialed this differently, I wish I would have dialed that differently, and so on. So you're not satisfied with the tone. That's where reamping kicks in, because what reamping is actually is, it's more of a concept than pure like a device or something. You would, in the session, in parallel to just running your normal analog chain, you would record your direct input into the board as well, so that you have, let's say, a clean guitar signal, and after the session, if you want to kind of reevaluate your tone, you want to re-record it with a different equipment, then you would send it out of your audio interface through a reamping chain, meaning you would send it out of your audio interface into your amplifier, re-record that into your audio interface. So this kind of concept is reamping. And there's certain hardware which is dedicated for this job, like the ReAmp-Box. The ReAmp-Box basically is I would say kind of a DI box for this specific application. What it does is that it makes an impedance matching so that you're hitting the amplifier in the same fashion as if you would be playing your guitar. Now, why is that important? Because normally if you would send it straight out of your audio interface straight into your amp, you're introducing two problems potentially with that. One is signal degradation because of the impedance mismatch. So you're not fully representing, let's say, the gear accurately. You're not running your signal true to the gear as you want to capture it. And also ground hums. So you're getting ground loops everywhere. You might introduce some crippling ground hum into your recording. The ReAmp-Box takes care of both of these things. And there's a lot of discussion and talk out there that there are alternatives such as like a Boss pedal, because a Boss pedal also does the impedance matching part of what the ReAmp-Box is capable of. I have explored some different possibilities over here, both today and in the past, and I just want to share you my findings over here. But in order to kind of, let's say, take a semi-scientific approach to it, we have to kind of have a reference tone which we really are sure, which we know of, and then, let's say, compare it after the ReAmping box. And for this, I got this 2-channel oscilloscope over here. This oscilloscope basically can measure signal curves. So what it does, in kind of a, let's say, technical term, it is comparing an voltage across a different spectrum of within the time dimension. So that's what your signals basically are. You know, it's voltage changes during time or while time elapses. So that's what an oscilloscope is for. This oscilloscope has 2 input channels. So that means I can measure one time the reference, so our start, which we're going to come to in regards of the setup in a moment, and we can measure the output. So we have like a clear A-B comparison, which we can do over here, at least visually. Acoustically, I'm not bothering so much because of the source of the tone. You will find out for yourself in a bit. Okay, let me change the camera over here, and then we're going to discuss my setup over here, because that's also a little bit more complicated. So we have now the following thing. I'm going to take this away. I have a digital multimeter, which is capable of putting out a 1 kilohertz square wave. So that means that we can basically put out the square wave, and that then is being grabbed off of these I'll call them crocodile pinchers for lack of a better word. You tell me in the comments what these are called. I have no idea. But these crocodile pinchers are one time going into the audio interface. So they're putting, let's say, that to a different cable, which then goes into the audio interface. And they're also putting that out to one channel of the oscilloscope. Let me change the camera back over here. So one of these cables over here, these are basically the oscilloscope input twiddlies. I don't know what they're called. Yeah, but anyhow, I'm getting the signal into the oscilloscope through these crocodile pinchers and this, let's say, input twiddly, and going in parallel to the interface. Now, let me go ahead to my Reaper setup to show you what I got over here. Do me a favor, turn down your headphone volume right now, because it's going to be loud in a few seconds. Okay. This is the original source signal, 1 kHz Waveware. Let's go. Hope you're not deaf by now. If so, then sorry. That is basically my input signal, which is coming in. And I am sending this out of a reamping setup, out of both analog 3 and analog 4. So these are my two outputs which are getting this signal. Why two outputs? We're going to find out in a moment. Moving back to the single webcam over here. What I'm now doing is I'm sending analog 3 out through my ReAmping box, and basically this is my cable where the reamping signal is coming out from, and signal 4 is going to, hang on, this cable over here. Where is it? Over here. Yeah. So I got analog 4, analog 3. We're first gonna take a look at analog 3, which is coming out of my ReAmp-Box. Now, I said that I prepared something over here, and this is what I prepared. Let me engage that. So, all right. So what I've now prepared is the following. I got my smartphone over here, which is recording straight at the oscilloscope, and let me take that away so that we get this signal. And yeah, as said before, my tone signal generator is going into my interface. That's pushing it out of the interface through the ReAmp box, and that signal is then basically captured through the second channel of the oscilloscope. So the oscilloscope in itself has voltage range settings, so it always, in reference to, let's say, this grid over here, one block reflects a certain size and voltage. That's what you set up over here, or over here for channel 2. And then here you got the time dimension. Yeah, so that means that you can look within a certain time range on the x-axis. I set it up so that we have a visually good point where we can see the respective frequency, and yeah, so that we just have a nice picture of the input signal. Now, what happens if I engage the second channel so that we can see both signals at the same time? Let's go. As you can see, there's a small shift in phase, yeah, but from an amplitude perspective, they're now spot on. They're now exactly the same height and amplitude. This means that if I would reamp this, so to speak, the signal, then it would be as if I would never go through the interface. What you do see is, I'm going to make it so that we can have an A-B comparison. So this is input, this is output. What you do see eventually, let me turn down the intensity a little bit so that it becomes more apparent. You can see a little bit of a ripple on top of the square waveform. This could be because square waves are more inherent to distortion than sine waves. I don't know if this also appears with sine waves. This might be for later testing, but you can see it over here. I'm going to turn the intensity back up so that we can see nicely in and output. And there we go. Now we see again in and output, and they're spot on amplitude wise. Okay, this means, or this comes from the fact that my input gain, of course, of my Palmer da Capo box is set accordingly. So if I would set it like this over here, then my signal would be way too hot. It would be way hotter than I'm actually playing my guitar into the amplifier, which can be a cool thing at times. So Your mileage may vary, but for me personally, I like to be as true as possible. The same thing in the other direction. If I do it like this, then we're getting like a totally weak signal into our amplifier, and this will not push the respective gain stages of the amplifier as if you would plug in a guitar. Again, it can be a cool effect. It can be used to your liking, but I personally like to stay accurate and true. So let me set up the amplitude again to match. Okay. That looks good. Okay. So now we're again spot on there. All right. The next experiment which I want to conduct together with you is the Boss Pedal ReAmp, let's say, myth. So what this is basically is, you have seen that the Palmer da Capo does a pretty good job in reflecting the amplitude, and it gets a clean signal, and so on and so forth. A lot of people out there say you don't need that stuff, you just need a Boss pedal, because the Boss pedal has a built-in buffer which will do the impedance matching for you. And since everybody and their mother has a Boss pedal flying around at home, this is basically what they refer to. So I thought, let's repeat that test which we have done. Let's just go ahead and repeat that test if it really can live up to that. So my signal chain is as following. I'm not going this time through analog out 3 through the Palmer da Capo and then taking this cable over here. This cable is just stuck there, leaving it aside. I'm instead going out of my analog level, analog output number 4, and then going into the Boss pedal over here, and then grabbing off that signal which comes out. For this, important, Boss pedal has to be disengaged, not turned on. So, this is set up on the oscilloscope as well, and yeah, let me just show you what this looks like. Boom. This is what we get. Now, what becomes apparent is the ripple over here on top of the square wave is much, much higher. This lets me believe that there's a little bit of a signal quality loss. I can tell you, not really that much, not really relevant for us, but there is a degradation in keeping the pristineness, so to speak, but also the amplitude is a little bit lower. So this means that while it does work quite well to kind of replicate a reamping signal, you will have to deal with the fact that you have a little bit of a signal loss in regards of amplitude. However, if you are working in your DAW, you can simply go ahead in the channel settings and you can use the output fader to boost that signal a little bit. And I think somewhere around 0.8 we get like a perfect amplitude size once again out there. All right. Now, one disadvantage of the Boss pedal is, compared to the Palmer da Capo has a ground lift, so you can break ground loops. You cannot do this with the Boss. There are two different things how you can do this. You can either use line isolators, which are basically transformers 1-to-1, so they have basically no signal loss. So you can kind of break the ground loop through that, because that's what the transformers are there for. Or what I was thinking is, you can use a wireless guitar system. Why not? Because this also has the impedance matching stuff like the Boss or like any pedal, but it also has, the wireless capability, which breaks the ground loops. So what I'm gonna do over here is I'm gonna take this away. Gonna plug this into the line 6 over here, and I got this pedal over here, which is just bypassed and holds my wireless thing. This is just that I have a jack so where I can put up the wireless transmitter, and I'm gonna measure what's going on over here. So you can see already the oscilloscope is, let's say, going crazy. There we go. And you can see again with the 0.8 dB boost still engaged here on Reaper that I get a perfectly sized amplitude. So, in regard of alternatives for a real reamp setup, I definitely would prefer using the wireless system over here because you're breaking the ground. I'm going to play audio examples, actually. So I'm going to play guitar, or at least a riff, through all of the 3 different methods so that we can evaluate if there is actually any sound loss. From my experience from the past, I don't remember that there really was any. It was fairly the same thing as if I would plug directly into the amp, which makes for a cool alternative. Alright, so I was already done actually recording the video. I had everything set up in Wondershare Filmora, my video editing program. I actually had the video uploaded to YouTube already, but not set up the metadata. And then, oh my god, it became apparent to me that my situation, my reamping setup, which I have set up over here, only takes into consideration what happens if you use a Loadbox. So meaning that you are actually provoking a full-scale ground loop, so to speak, by actually taking something from the amp to the Loadbox and from the Loadbox back into the PC. And I was asking myself, seriously, hey, what happens if you are actually using a microphone instead of, let's say, the Loadbox, and then combined with an IR in Reaper? Shouldn't that break the ground loop? Apparently, unfortunately not. We're still getting super crippling, mad, mean noises. I think they're from the PC setup or something. Yeah, anyways, I re-recorded everything. I set everything up with a microphone over here. You can see it over here, which is miking up the cab. And let's play the results. Alright, now that you have heard the audio examples for yourself, let's come to my personal conclusion. Don't cut corners. Seriously, whenever you're using one of the alternatives which I presented over here, you are bumping straight into the next problem, which you have to kind of mitigate. And that will, in the end, eventually cost you more than just simply going with the ReAmp-Box. If you're going for the Boss over here, you heard it yourself, horrible ground loop noise coming in. If you smack a line isolator right behind that, you're losing part of the signal, so it doesn't have that, that gain structure, that complexity anymore. And you have to bump up the amplitude in Reaper, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of, I don't know how you call it in English. It's like chasing the wind somehow. Well, if you use the wireless setup, then you have a little bit of a background hum, hiss. but that is nothing which a noise gate wouldn't get control over. However, it's just simply not meant for this, you know? It's meant to do other things. It's cool. It's a cool alternative for cables, but, you know, you're still losing a little bit of the low end compared to the real deal. So there's that. I personally would say just buy a ReAmp box. You know, they're not that expensive. The Polymer TRAVE, which is the successor of the Da Capo, is around about $100 here in Germany at Thomann. You might get away with a similar price at Sweetwater, or you can see if they maybe have Radial a little bit cheaper than it is here in Europe. So there's that. Plenty of different options out there. I personally would say go get a ReAmp box, be happy. Anyhow, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all of you guys' support out there. You have brought me incredibly close to 1,000 subscribers. Do me a favor, if you haven't subscribed yet, then subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, comment if you do agree or if you disagree with the tests which I have conducted over here, your own experiences with reamping. Let's engage a little bit. Let's make a little bit noise on this channel. I'm very close to getting 1K subscribers, which will allow me to apply for monetization. And that would be extremely awesome if we could reach that goal together. Thank you so much so far. Yeah, I'm your host, Phil. I'm out. And until next time, and keep it metal. Thank you.